Thanks everybody for joining. I want to call to order the Board of Aldermen regular meeting for Thursday, November 5th. We're going to start with notification from Alderman Leonard.
Please join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, we ask that you bless our town and keep it a beautiful and friendly place to live. We pray for your guidance to enable this board to work together to make fair and informed decisions tonight. We also pray that our police officers, firefighters, and members of our armed services remain safe as they risk so much for our security. We further ask that you keep a particularly watchful eye over our forward deployed service members who are serving in harm's way, as so many of them at various times have called North Topsail Beach home. This is especially significant as we prepare next week to observe both Veterans Day and the 245th anniversary of the birth of the United States Marine Corps, the finest fighting force on the planet. And also, as we both reflect upon the loss and honor the selfless sacrifice of Gunnery Sergeant Darrell W. Boatman, United States Marine Corps, one of our own who we lost 15 years ago yesterday as a result of wounds sustained in combat action in Iraq. We also pray that our town be spared the ravages of hurricanes and other natural disasters, and that everyone associated with the town remains safe and secure. We ask this in his name. Amen.
Amen. I
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So the next item is the approval of the agenda. And if I can get a motion, and then I'd like to have some discussion on that.
Move that the agenda be approved.
Second for discussion.
Second.
So a couple items that have come into my attention, I wanted to bring up to the board to see if you'd like to have them added on here for discussion tonight. The one that we really do need to talk about, in my opinion, because it was pushed from the last meeting. I know our attorney has had a chance to do some follow-up on it as well, is the discussion about Holly Ridge annexation agreement for a specific parcel. Do we have a motion from the board to add that?
So moved.
And so
Where do you want to?
I
where should
was
that go at?
thinking under public presentations and hearings, have that be item C,
Okay.
and have Mr. Eads fill us in on what the
Can we
details of that are.
probably need to put that under business, though.
You want that under new business?
I'm not gonna be requesting any action tonight, but I think it'd be more perfectly placed.
So put it under 10.
Under 10, under new business? Okay.
And it'll be a discussion topic.
Okay. The other one was, I wanted to talk about a couple things with the meetings, and we already have the board meeting schedule on here. So the one thing that I'd like to discuss would be the location for future meetings, if we're going to be able to open up at all to the public, having a larger venue for that. And then the other item I think we need to do is schedule a special meeting with the Carters, a work session, so we're able to go through the financial plan in significant detail, a lot more than we can do at a standard board meeting. So those are the items that I would like
We
to.
already got that on there.
We didn't have the special Carter with the
Can we
board.
just kind of,
I was just gonna put it in that
So,
same conversation
sure.
under C.
sure,
That's right.
yeah,
That label's broad enough.
yeah,
Okay, is there anything else anybody else needs to add?
no.
Okay, so then I'm gonna ask again, can we get a motion to approve the modified agenda?
I'll move to accept the modified agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, then we're gonna move right on to the manager's report.
Okay, well, as you know, I've been trying to gear the manager's report so that it can go out as public information on the website and the Facebook. And, at least what responses I've gotten to that have been fairly positive, but a few things I guess I wasn't clear enough about, such as our desire to change the charter for annexation. We were not planning to annex the rest of the state of North Carolina at any point, although it would be nice. So I will clarify that in the next report. A few things that did come up, which I updated the board members themselves on this week. The one that probably has more public concern is the major snowflake debacle, where the power poles, Jones Oslo had been removing them and replacing them all the way from the bridge down to the Surf City line. And in doing so, they removed all the hardware that we would normally use to put up the Christmas decorations and plug them in. So Scott has been working diligently to try to reassemble the equipment we need to put them up, and then he has to coordinate with Jones Onslow to actually get the power up, so that it's possible that we may have the north end decorated sometime prior to getting the south end decorated, and that's the only reason it will probably be delayed a little bit. Other than that, if anyone has any questions, I'd be glad to try and answer.
I was just saying, it's a good thing that y'all started looking at that now, right?
Well, they do go up pretty early, yeah.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, as somebody that lives on the north side of the bridge, those are okay?
Yes.
Good. I have to go home tonight. So,
They're up.
we like our snowflake.
This is why everybody skips Thanksgiving, because we have to get ready.
Well, you know, I overcome it, you know, as not the manager, just driving through that, they went up too soon after Halloween, but, you know, I guess people really like them, so.
They do like them
They do.
quite a bit. Okay. Does anybody have any other questions on the manager's report?
I do.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
Have you gotten an update yet from the window engineers on their situation with the liability issues and being able to bid that contract?
No, I haven't. In fact, I had spoken to Mr. Eads, I guess probably about a week ago, and I communicated then back to Mr. Foreman that we would be looking for an indemnification or something from Yogi, his erstwhile partner, assuring us that the town would not be the subject or included in any litigation that would arise out of the design. He has not yet responded to me.
Okay.
Just real quick,
Yes, sir.
on the Onslow County parking area, they've stopped completely. It actually looked like they pulled back some of the walkway that they had that they went to
No,
the
I think
beach.
it washed.
Forced them.
Oh, really? Because when I talked to the engineer, it was some time ago, he was like, oh, no, there was no dune here. I'm like, yeah, there was.
Yeah, I talked to them too.
Oh, okay.
So my understanding is they're waiting for the time that they're gonna be able to do some work on the ocean side of that structure. They have to put some new pilings in, and they can't do that right now. So I'm not sure if they've modified their permits yet with the town or what they've done, but we, at this point, are not sure when they're coming back, but they can't do anything on the ocean side until middle of November.
So they've just abandoned what they're doing, because it just looks like they just walked away from what they had.
We need to keep a real close eye as we approach nor'easter season on that deal line and decide what we're gonna do.
Well, and also with the truck haul project, I don't know if we've added, if they've been added to our permit or not added to our permit. I don't know if we have the easements for that area.
To be honest, I don't know when the plan is, or we can double check with him.
Okay.
And when does that start?
It will be delayed a little bit, but it should start before the end of November.
I had mid-November in my head.
Yeah, FEMA's taking another look at the sand sources. They got confused as to where we were. They thought we were using the offshore sand source borrow area, and it had already been worked out that we would be doing it, trucking it from the
Right.
mainland, but it all got confused, so we're.
I think you said at the last meeting that they've already started stockpiling it.
Yes. Yeah, so it'll go fairly short.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, then let's move on. I believe for the open forum, Clerk, you did receive a couple.
Yes, ma'am.
Right.
I received 2 comments. First from Miss Becky Dixon of 113 Barton Bay Court. Now that an exceptionally significant amount of money is being spent on 4 miles of North Topsail Beach, I have a question. When can the citizens and employees of North Topsail Beach hear a commitment toward and see a definite movement on the construction of a public safety building to house our fire, rescue, and police departments? This topic seems to lack the level of importance to make it a priority. That is something that I cannot understand. My second question relates to today's meeting. If the special meeting on Saturday was open to the public, why is today's meeting back to the virtual format? Am I missing something?
And I would like to respond to both of those items. So the public safety building or the expansion needs of both our police and fire are being captured in the financial planning events that we're going through with Carter and Associates. So they haven't been forgotten about. They are being planned for. And so that's where that is being captured. And also the opening to the public, we currently have these meetings scheduled for the library. And as those of us in the room, it's just very tight to be able to maintain social distancing and have it open and for the public as well. So we will be talking about the meeting venue moving forward.
And then the second and final comment is from Tom and Liz Beckingham of 1896 New River Inlet Road. We are not voters in NTB, but do own a condo at Shipwatch. We are supportive of all efforts to improve and protect the beaches in NTB. This would include parking fees, increasing the occupancy taxes, as well as our property taxes. All share in improving the beaches. For the most part, visitors to NTB really do not bring in much additional revenue, as there's no shopping, little in the way of dining or other tourist attractions. What we have is great beaches. These needs to be the focus. This is probably a comment that could easily be challenged, but in my limited exposure, I do find that guests, renters, and tourists to be mostly unconcerned about the beaches, with leaving trash on the beaches and elsewhere on a daily basis, parking violations, and walking on the dunes. Just recently, I observed a woman walking on the dunes to take a picture of the sunrise. She pretty much ignored me when I mentioned the damage to the structures, as she was literally falling all over the dune, but did say it was her last day at the beach and she wanted the picture.
Just one quick comment on that. Whenever we walk the beach and we see somebody near the dunes, the way that I handled it is I said, hey, I just wanted to let you know it's a $500 fine if you don't get off the beach. And as soon as you say that, they get off the dune. I said, sorry, but you gotta get off the, it's 500 each. I tell them. That tends to work better than just telling them to get off the beach.
Okay, then with that concluded, then we're going to move right on to the public presentation and hearing. So the first item would be Mr. Stumbo.
Thank you. Am I good to sit here or do I need to move? So, camera in the back.
If you want to sit there, I can just move the camera.
I'm good wherever you want me.
There's a chair here.
Appreciate you coming in person.
Yeah, thank you.
Glad to be here.
You want a chair?
You
No,
just
I'm-
wanted
I'm
to get
fine.
out of the house.
I'm fine. I'm fine standing up.
Thank you.
It gives me close access to the door if anybody starts throwing things. First of all, great news today. We did accept bids for the restoration of the town hall this afternoon at 3. We had 5 bids and we did open the bids. You do have in front of you a tabulation of the bids, so you've probably seen the numbers. The low apparent bidder, the apparent low bidder is Atlantic Contracting out of Jacksonville with a low bid of $1,080,000 for the base bid, plus what we'd recommend the alternates would bring their full bid to be $1,177,200. We've got a time for construction of 6 months from when they get started, and the bids are valid for 60 days. So the board will need to act within 60 days to authorize a contract with the apparent low bidder or whatever y'all decide to do. So we're excited to be here with that, and be more than happy to take any questions on the bids.
I do have 2.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sure Alderman Grant will be right there next. But could you, the total again for Atlantic with the base plus all of the alternates added in?
It's $1,177,200.
And then my question was, what is it that we have in our budget as far as being paid from insurance for this?
It's a little over $300,000, I believe, is Caitlin here?
Okay. We've already collected about 275-ish, I think. I think we have about 80,000 left to collect. So total over 300,000 in insurance.
So under 350 is what we're being paid out, and the repairs
Yes, ma'am.
is closer to $1.2 million.
Correct.
And my understanding is that FEMA, when they scoped the work, felt that that insurance payment was more than sufficient to pay for the repairs to the town hall and will not entertain additional reimbursement to us.
Are we able to go back to them now that we have the bids in detail and ask for assistance?
I guess we can always ask, and they had indicated that, don't bother, but, I mean, obviously, there's a bit
I
of
mean, there's a huge
a
delta
difference
there.
here.
Yeah. And we don't really have those extra funds just sitting around in the budget.
Right.
So I would like to ask that. I don't know if there's any other options for grants or anything we can do to try and help with this difference.
Yeah, I've been in shock since we saw the bid opening, but, of course, we have worked with some of our legislative assistants and stuff like that, and maybe that will be the route we'll have to go to get FEMA to reconsider.
Madam Mayor, we also reserved our rights with the insurance company, at least the check I was involved with. We didn't sign any release of all.
Right, so we could get a private adjuster in possibly and see if we can go back.
Possibly. I mean, there may not be coverage. I don't want to get into all that right now, but that's a potential avenue. I wouldn't bank on it, no pun intended, but it's a potential avenue we can pursue.
Yeah, I just think we need to try and uncover any possibility for additional revenue to come in to help with the expense to get us back in there. Yes, I'm
I
sorry.
just want to ask Mr. Stumbo, are you as surprised with these numbers as everyone else in this room is?
No, I'm not. And two reasons. One, knowing what construction cost is and how we give people advice on what renovations versus new construction would be, we're right in line. So let me tell you what that would mean. If you came to me today and said to replace that, build a new town hall, pretty much what you have where you're at, I'd tell you it'd be about $400 to $425 a square foot. It's a lot of money.
Right.
So when somebody asks me, okay, so now I've got a building, I want to do a renovation of it, we tell people it's about half the cost of new construction. So that would be 200, 225, somewhere in that range. Your project is not a full renovation, it's a major restoration. So it's somewhere lower than renovation, but not a simple project. And it's coming in right at $150 a square foot. So it looks to be pretty appropriate for the numbers we would be seeing. Also, I talked with Atlantic Contracting this afternoon after the bids, just to discuss their bid with them. And they mentioned that they did a very similar project for Jones Onload just, I guess it was this last summer, last year, sometime in that time frame. About half the size of yours, because it's only the downstairs of a building of about the same footprint. And he said it was almost exactly half this cost. So very similar project, very similar cost. I'm not surprised at all.
Anybody else have questions?
Yes, sir.
Is the metal roof on the porch additions,
I'm sorry, say again?
is the metal roof on the building, is it stipulated in the bid contract for a metal roof on the building?
The base bid is fiberglass shingles. There's an alternate bid for metal roof at $58,500, which is pretty much going to be required to get the wind speeds that we need.
Is that gonna be a fortified roof? Or
Yes.
just a metal roof?
Yes. So the total, to kind of give you an idea of what the roofing cost is, the base bid roofing was $52,500. The alternate bid is $58,500. That's $110,000. 10% of the cost of this project is the roof. Yeah, the roof we're putting back on there is a very stout roof.
I just have two
Yes,
quick
sir.
questions. One is, I'm assuming you're recommending all the alternatives because that's how.
Yes, but there's,
Go ahead.
there's an A2 and an A2.1.
Right.
You don't take them both, you take either or, it's the roof. And A2 is a new vestibule on the building, so you don't enter right into the building. You have an airlock, which we believe will help tremendously with some of the problems that we're having in the building. So we'd recommend that. And that's a $14,800. It's a lot of money, but in the scheme of $1 million, it's not a lot of money.
And then just real quick, we are putting in the hurricane windows and that.
Yes, sir. Yeah, 150 mile per hour impact rated windows.
Those are only done as alternate bids so that we could identify the cost of the upgrade, because the, I believe it's the Golden Leaf Foundation will be helping us with anything that's a mitigation or an improvement of that type.
And interestingly, to add on to that, Atlantic Contracting actually put a $0 for the alternate bid for the higher rated windows, because they included the higher rated windows in their base bid, because they knew they would be required. And we know that too, but we were looking for that difference. So we'll have to generate that from the other cost, the other contractors.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, well, thank you, sir, so much for coming. And
You're
it
welcome.
sounds like we have 60 days before the bid expires. So
That's
certainly
correct.
We don't need to wait that long, but we can, I guess, regroup from a staff perspective on available funds and potentially put this on our agenda for next month. Is that how the board would like to proceed?
Yes.
All in favor of that? Yeah? No?
No, I don't agree with that.
What would you like to do, Alderman Grant?
I don't, if we could get them to come back and report that they've got the funds to us, why do we want to wait another month and pay rent that we don't have to pay? Why wouldn't we just do? As I understand it, and I would go to the town attorney, we have to, if we're going to go forward, we have to take the lowest bid, correct?
Lowest responsible.
Responsible.
All right, so we got a lowest responsible bid.
Responsible and responsible.
Right, okay, so we've got that. I'm just looking at it thinking, if we know we've got the funds available to it, I mean, we're going to have to do something anyway, right? So
I
if we
don't
give-
disagree
so
with-
can we give him the authority, if we've got the funds, to report back to us and then pull the trigger on this thing? I'm just throwing it out, it's why we want to wait a month?
Well, first of all, I believe that our temporary town hall, that's still under FEMA reimbursement. So really, I don't know if that's really costing us out of pocket funds. So one more month, 6 months of renovation, I don't think that was a deal. But my concern is that we get a better handle on some of these sources of funding that we're going to have available, because whatever we can generate from grants and going back to the insurance company and so forth is gonna make, a big difference. And I'd like to feel a bit more comfortable about it. So I don't see a problem waiting 30 days to improve our comfort level, if that's what you want to call it, because whatever the difference is between what we have available from our funding sources and grants and so forth, it's going to come out of the budget surplus, which we've already taken money out of the budget surplus for town park.
Well, I would just say that I don't think working through the insurance company is gonna be quick. If we have to go the route of hiring a private adjuster, we're not gonna have those answers within 30 days. So I do believe that we'll have some answers, but I don't think we'll have, we may not even have the FEMA answer within 30 days unless they just real quick say no.
I mean, I just, and again, I'm just looking at it straight from the
No, I
numbers and stuff, and I don't, we've now put this out for bid. The first time we didn't get enough bidders. Now we've got other bidders coming in. We've got the person we've hired to tell us whether this is in the range of reasonableness, and you said that it is. What I'm looking at is, if, and to Mike's point, which is a good point, all right? If he identifies the fact we've got the money, and I understand it might come out of surplus, I don't know what our option is
We
but
have
to
to
go
do the
forward
building,
with the
right?
building. Okay, and that's, and I'm just looking at it and saying, I understand all the arguments for it, and if we are getting reimbursed, maybe, but I guess what I'm saying is, if we don't, we use the wrong term, it's a Hobson's choice. We either go forward with the building or we go forward with the building. We either go forward with it now, or 60 days, or 30 days, or 15 days, or whatever. And all I'm saying is, it's like, I just don't know what choice we've got, but to go forward with the building.
Do you want to make a motion?
Point of order, this is not a business item.
Okay.
It's listed as a presentation.
Right.
You'd have to suspend the rules, amend the agenda, add it as a action item. But if we're going to call a special meeting with the Carters in the next week or so, maybe that's the,
I'm gonna add that to the agenda.
you could add that.
I'm fine with that.
To the special meeting.
I'm fine with that.
So, yeah, we find out that we're not getting any more money from FEMA, we're not getting any more money from our insurance, we're not getting any more money from anybody, and we're gonna have to eat this thing. we still gotta do it.
We still have to build
We
buildings.
still have to build it. So, I mean, it's not a,
Just a little bit of shock tonight, that's all.
oh.
I'm with you.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why I asked the question. I framed the question to the way I framed it was anyone else in this room, you know?
Well, I just added it to my notes, and I'm sure Laura did the same thing too, for this special meeting. When we talk with the Carters, we will put that on this one.
Can we do
I have
that
a
one?
question.
Yes.
The FEMA money is 300,000 basically?
Insurance.
That's
Oh,
insurance.
insurance.
Yes.
Okay, now that includes flood and wind?
Not flood,
Okay, because
but
FEMA covers the flood, right?
yes, well,
Mhm.
it's, the flood does, there was no flood coverage on the town hall, as I understand it,
Okay,
because it was out of the flood zoning, out of
Right.
the floodplain.
Floodplain.
Yes.
I got it.
So no flood insurance, but the wind and hail and just the overall coverage on the building is what the insurance.
And
that's
that
what
was
the
like
insurance is.
NC,
It's,
North
it's
Carolina.
in a Cobra zone, so it wasn't FEMA flood anyway.
Well, no.
okay.
We're not talking about flood. We're talking about wind and hail.
Well,
But then she asked a question about where the insurance money is coming from, and is it the North Carolina wind and hail?
joint underwriter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Joint
I'm
underwriter
sorry, I thought you meant
association.
the other.
And that claim, so you all know, is still open, and so we do have the ability to go back to the adjusters and talk to them and petition for more reimbursement.
Well, I would think you've got 5 bids here. All you have to do is say, this is what it's gonna cost. And your $300,000 isn't really gonna cover it.
Their
At all.
position's gonna be, if it was flood, it doesn't matter.
Right, but the roof and the windows and all the upstairs,
We certainly have a lot to work with here.
anything from my experience at the reef and doing our whole thing, flood only covered 4 feet from the floor. So anything above that had to be covered by wind, unless they determined that it was wind-driven rain and we didn't have the extra, because that's very expensive insurance, and we probably didn't have the extra insurance for that, because that's a separate policy.
Part of your wind and hail policy?
No,
I think it is.
it's a rider for the,
Okay.
on the
I've got
wind policy, but most of the condos and everything didn't have it, because it's very cost prohibitive.
I don't think having, I think I'd be very surprised to find that the issue is that we didn't have flood insurance, because I don't think most of the damage that was sustained to town hall was floodwaters. It was wind that blew the roof off, and then the rain came in behind it and got inside the building and created the mold and everything else. I think we're gonna be fine in terms of what type of insurance should cover the loss. The matter then becomes, how much insurance do we have to cover the loss? And can we go back in and ask for a second look and a supplemental claim? Which we should be able to do. I'm doing the same thing with a rental house in Jacksonville, over the same storm.
Well, they-
It's personal, it's personal, yeah.
When I talked to our wind adjuster at the reef, the main thing is you have to have a break in the envelope, a breach in the envelope, which would be the roof. And if, all the damage from the water from the breach in the roof should be covered under the wind insurance.
And these things are gonna be subject to negotiation, so I don't mind us talking about it high level here.
Okay.
This could end up materializing into litigation as well. I think we know what it's gonna cost now. For this very reason, we left the claim open, didn't sign a release. If it's the consensus of the board, the staff and I will find a independent adjuster, look at their adjuster's work, look at the work in the bid, and go back to that well and see what happens.
Yes, sir.
Sooner rather than later. So is there a consensus?
Yeah.
Can I just add one more thing
Yes.
that I think that we ought to be doing, since we're talking about this meeting with the Carters? Can we give the direction to the staff and to the attorney to start working on the contract with these people.
Yeah.
Okay, to start, like, let's not go 2 weeks from now and say, now we have 2 more weeks to get the contract in place. Because it's gonna take time to get the contract in place anyway. So as long as we're working in tandem.
Yep. Is there consensus on that?
Yes.
Okay,
Are
thanks.
we good? Okay. Okay, the next item, and thank you, sir, so much.
Thank
I
you.
think we made progress.
I'm excited to have the thing move forward. Probably not as much as y'all are, but certainly excited. Y'all have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good holiday.
Okay, so we should then have Mr. Fran Way.
Yeah, we'll put the contract together as soon as we know, have direction on which alternates. And the manager and I can talk about that. Excuse me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Fran?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Nice to see you, Fran. Do you have a
Good.
update for us?
Good seeing you too. You broke up a little bit on me, Mayor.
I was saying we have the slides that you had sent in, so.
Yes.
You want to walk through
Okay.
them?
Do you want, and you want me to, can Laura bring those up or it should just be me?
I don't know if we can bring those up on the screen.
Okay.
We have them in front of us.
Okay.
Want to just talk through them, that would work, Fran.
Okay. Let me see here.
Did he send us something that you'd like for me to put up on the screen?
Yes.
It was- Okay.
I can't.
And
Is it a bid tabulation?
There's a link.
Is-
Click on France.
We're bringing it up, Fran. We're trying.
Okay, I'm seeing.
Okay.
So, and then I guess Deb, I'll just ask you to scroll for this.
All right.
So my name's Fran Way. I'm with I'm with Applied Technology Management. I've been a coastal engineer for the town for the last few years. We're teaming with TI Coastal and working closely with the TI Coastal engineers and geologists. And this is just an update on where we are in beach projects. Next slide. So here we have the entire shoreline of the North Topsail Beach from north to south. On the southern end, in kind of the phase 5 and phase 4 areas, last year we did the Dune truck haul, and that was partially related to Hurricane Matthew and partially related to Hurricane Florence. This year, this upcoming winter, we're going to continue that Dune truck haul all the way up to Topsail Reef Villas up into phase 1. So we'll be doing phase 4, phase 3, phase 2, and then most of phase 1. But in addition to that, you have the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers AIWW project is Cedar Bush Cut area and the AIWW back there and the channel to Jacksonville. That project is also scheduled to occur, and they should be setting that up and doing that here later this month. So later this month, the truck haul should begin, and the Corps project up on the north end should begin as well. So they're doing a dredge project, we're doing a truck haul. They shouldn't conflict at all. Homeowners will be seeing, more truck traffic, and I'm sure maybe some of the homeowners, in the phase 4, phase 5 area last year, experienced some similar truck traffic. And then the dune profile itself is variable, but we have it for the entire shoreline. And next slide, please. This is for the Florence project. We have our category G which is down in the phase 5 area. And then we also have our, category B, and that's the Dune Hall. And that's on the quote unquote natural beach. And most of the shoreline did qualify for category B for FEMA, but there were a few sections that did not. And FEMA makes it very difficult to qualify for Cat B dune erosion. But obviously Florence was a very significant storm where most of the shoreline did qualify for it. Now this just gives you an overview of where we are for the FEMA Cat B. We're doing this winter. And then for FEMA Cat G, we're going to aiming for next winter. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, now this is offshore of North Topsail Beach and Topsail Island in general. Up to the north end, we have the New River Inlet, that bar area. The town has an ongoing permit out to 2041 for dredging that New River Inlet channel. That is actually, that's almost like the town has a permit in hand to dredge that material. And that's usually around 600, 700,000 cubic yards. So that's a good thing to have in your pocket, but obviously without a groin or something else where there was some destabilization of the inlet along that northern shoreline, along the inlet shoreline that has some cause for concern. A little farther south, you have the 2015 phase 5 bar area. And that was the one where there were some rocks on the beach. There is still material left in there, but the regulators, Fish and Wildlife Service, and a lot of the turtle-related natural resource agencies just do not want us to use that bar area anymore. And then I have all that. Then if you can look offshore, there's bar areas and they're labeled A through S. They're basically A, B, C, D, E, F, G. There's 20 bar areas offshore. These were mostly identified by the Army Corps of Engineers for either Topsail Beach or Surf City / North Topsail Beach, that project that the town is doing here. You can also notice there's a lot of hard bottom in here, a hard bottom offshore where they have to avoid it. For all these bar areas that have been the North Topsail Beach / Surf City bar areas that the Corps is going to do are for G, H, J, L, N, O, P, Q, S, and T. And what is kind of interesting here is that, so Q is a bar area that the Q bar area and the North Topsail Beach 2015 phase 5 bar area overlap. And so it's pretty interesting that they're saying that the phase 5 bar area, we can no longer use it because of the rocks, but it's actually bar area Q is featured in the, this is the two, and this is, maybe they updated it recently, and they probably will not hit the same area, but it's still the same. It's basically the same area. We're going to find out a lot about kind of the offshore and what kind of sand and sediment and material is offshore here soon, and as soon as they start dredging. If you look down to the south, it says bar area A. Bar area A is basically just south of Topsail Island. That wasn't bar area that they looked at for Topsail Beach. They're not doing that anymore. We looked at that area and there does look like some good sand, but as you can see, it's very far away from the phase 5 category G bar area. And it would require a good amount of offshore investigation. And for us to stay on schedule and to have a competitive project for next season to do this category 5, category G phase 5 project, we're actually looking at truck hauling it. And that would be about 607,000 cubic yards. So, but I think the first item that we can go to is nowadays we have to set up a pre-application scoping meeting with the state, and all the natural resources agencies attend that, and it's all via Zoom at this point. we can set one of those up and kind of go through these alternatives and say that we like to, in order for this project to occur the following year, about a year from now in the winter window, we want to use an upland bar area. And then the next slide, I think that's the last slide. Oh, we still have, there are some upland and inshore sand sources. The upland sources to the right are the sand mines that we're using, the 421 sand and ST Wooten sand mine, where they're trucking the material. Cedar Bush Cut, the project they have, the town has done, successful projects using Cedar Bush Cut. And then obviously there's also in the lower left-hand corner, you see DA 143, that's that disposal area 143. And that material, they were putting dredged material in that bar area, but there does appear to be a good amount of beach compatible material in that bar area that is maybe something to think about. And the town has thought about it, in the last 10 years about trying to use that area. But so those are some other sources. And next slide. And I think that's the last one. Oh no, this is the bar area, 2015 offshore bar area. To the right is the dredged area. To the left, you see that undredged area. The material appears good, but there's some rubble in there, some large rubble rocks. And basically the resource agencies are saying that makes that material incompatible. And even if we have rock boxes and screens along shore, they're still maintaining that material is incompatible, and that, processing it prior to getting on the beach, it does not make it compatible. And then next slide. And for the New River Inlet Management, this is usually just thought of as a terminal groin project, but that is actually just one alternative to the project. And this is kind of a schematic, just like a little drawing of kind of where the groin would be and how it would trap that sand that's hitting the shoreline and getting into the inlet. Next slide. And so the truck haul will begin this winter. The permitted window to open will be November 16th to April 30th. We probably will be using that entire window. It is about 200,000 cubic yards of material. The Corps is scheduled to put about 250,000 cubic yards of material on the north end this winter as well. And that should be hopefully about a month, maybe 6 weeks of pumping. So hopefully it'll be November and December and they'll be out of here by then. They've got other projects to do. So for their sake, they really do need to try to stay on schedule. For the Florence Category G project, we're aiming where we want that project to occur next winter, about a year from now. And for the New River Inlet Management EIS, the board has been in coordination with Mickey Sugg at the Corps, and we're trying to get that scoping meeting set up. And that timeline is unfortunately completely controlled by the Army Corps of Engineers. And so that's my presentation.
I have a quick question, Fran, for the dredge at the north end. I know there were easements needed and they were going to figure out where they were going to put the pipe and whatnot. Has that all been figured out?
Yes. I'm not Fran, but yes, it has.
Okay.
They wouldn't even let the project out for contract until we obtained those. We obtained those, I want to say summer of 19.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Fran.
I said two quick ones. One is on the phase 5 stuff, that's G and the other is B. At some point, I don't want to take the time here. I don't know the difference between those two. I'm assuming
Sure.
G is as good as B in reimbursement.
G is a beach you walk on.
Right.
And the dune. B is just the dune.
Okay, so that's the separation between those two. And
And
then,
B is a natural native dune was there.
okay.
Yeah, and FEMA,
Go ahead.
FEMA Category G is that engineered beach where basically if you do a nourishment, they'll help you put it back there because they really believe in beach nourishments. And the FEMA FEMA's process for Category G shorelines is much more streamlined and much easier to do. It's the category B, the natural beach dune projects. If you talk to FEMA, they're like, we don't want to, you know, put a dune from Texas up to, you know, Long Island every single time a storm comes through. So that they make it much more difficult to qualify for the category B natural beach dune project.
And I'm assuming in the 5, that of course, taking that into consideration with the big project, or they just don't overlap, right? Because I think Mike brought that up some other.
We have brought that up several times.
Okay, that's all.
Mayor Pro Tem, did you have a question?
I have 3 questions, Fran. The first question, if in fact you decide to do the offshore borrow area, I might have asked this question before, can't remember. Is borrow area A in the COBRA zone? And would it be affected by the Audubon lawsuit that's in place to challenge Fish and Wildlife's decision to be able to move sand out of COBRA areas into non-COBRA areas for beach nourishment?
Yes, that's a good question. It's far enough offshore that it is not in a COBRA zone. Yep.
My second question is just about the details of the category B truck haul.
Okay.
Have you identified the drop-off sites where the sand will be staged prior to distribution on the beach?
Yes. Yes, that was in the bid package. That was basically, we'll be using some of the public parking lots, and then there are a few other spots. Goldsboro Lane, which is, and I guess I'll have to talk with
So it's not really going to interfere with our normal activities here. Those 2 areas will be fine as far as I'm concerned. I've had a question from homeowners about stairs. Should homeowners move their stairs and decking prior to the dune restoration work or not? And I'll tell you the reason I'm asking this question is because my understanding in Topsail Beach, when they did their beach nourishment project, of course, they went in front of some of the stairs down there, and people were not allowed to put back stairs and decking over the dunes since it was unvegetated. So they had to go to ramps and ropes. So I'm asking that question for our homeowners. Do we want to just have the contractor work around the stairs and decking like was done for the Matthew truck haul? Because those operators did a magnificent job of moving that sand around those stairs and decking without doing, I think, any real damage to them.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Mayor Pro Tem. Basically, these contractors are used to working around beach overwalks. Basically, every home has one up and down the beach, and they can get around it. And the state has been kind of restrictive on rebuilding walkways, as you just mentioned.
Yeah. So the final question I have is, you mentioned possibly doing a truck haul for category G for the phase 5 area instead of doing the offshore dredge. Is there an advantage to doing that? And could it be done more quickly than the offshore dredge project at a comparable cost or even a less smaller cost?
The truck haul, based on our bids for the truck haul that is going to happen here in about a month, or within the month, the bids are coming down and they were competitive. Going offshore would be about, dredges can work faster, they can pump more material. At the same time, you know, the truck hauls are, you know, you're paying local trucking companies, you are keeping more of that money in the local economy versus paying Great Lakes Dock and Dredge or something like that. So there are some benefits that way. It's just offshore right now that it just seems like we don't have the data and analysis to submit a permit application now for an offshore bar area. And to do that, and there really isn't a very good one. There's a lot of hard bottom offshore. It's going to require, additional study. And if we want this project to happen next winter, it does seem like the truck haul might be the most efficient option at this moment.
Fran, I just had one question, which was, and Mr. Eads, you might be the one to answer this question, but when we do the truck haul this year, do we have an easement to even be in front of the Onslow County beach accesses to place hands on those dunes?
I have to research that. I don't.
We have that issue with the one parking lot, I don't know what the plan is there, if the trucks were to show up tomorrow, are we skipping that, or are we doing that?
Well, I mean, if we don't have an easement, they don't give us an easement or a right of entry for this project, then we may have to skip it. There's some other legal implications there, but.
Okay, like we could just follow up on
Yeah,
that.
Sure. And then the court is very sensitive to that easement issue, and it was caused by and it usually, as most core things in FEMA, there's a project that happens in somewhere else in the state, or even in some other state elsewhere, and then all of a sudden something happens there, and then they blanket, they say, okay, we need new easements everywhere, and that sort of thing. And a lot of times, that a lot of the state is not as restrictive in their easement requirements, and so, but yeah, I can kind of consult with the attorney. We can discuss it a little bit.
You can consult with Brian.
Anything else for Fran? All right, well, thank you so much, Fran. That was very helpful. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
We should post this.
Okay. Consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good. All right, continuing business. Alderman Grant.
Just real quick, we've been talking about this for a while. I know we're going to set something up with Mr. Carter. But I think there's confusion about the 1%. We had a little bit of a discussion on Saturday that there may be an automatic 1% that we can put in without getting registration. And
There's a statute on the books that came out, Alderman or Mayor Pro Tem Denson, relatively recently.
Yeah.
Within the last year, that allowed certain towns to add an additional 1% to bring the total occupancy tax for those towns 7%. North Topsail Beach was one of those towns that already is on the books. Okay. I need to run down what Mayor Pro Tem Denson was talking about Saturday about that. Now,
that legislation didn't leave the state legislature. It's not a statute yet. It's my understanding.
well, okay. Well, I mean, I pulled it up through LexisNexis, which is after they're ratified, but there could be a procedural hiccup there. But if that is on the books and it is a statute and there is no sunset provision on it, at least that the version I read, then we already have a 1%.
Right. Okay.
That wouldn't preclude us from trying to go get another 1, 2, or 3% by way of additional legislation. If that is not on the books, we will have to get legislation to get that 1%.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure. I was going to say one thing about that. We had talked Saturday about it being difficult to get an increase in occupancy tax. I think the fact that that's already been bounced around the General Assembly is a very good sign if it's not on the books.
Given that we're going to, at some point this evening, talk about scheduling a special meeting with Carter's, how soon do you think we can find out for us what the real story is on the 2019 1%? Can you have it by the time we have our meeting?
I'd like to have it to you Monday. I would say tomorrow, but I've got meetings all day tomorrow. But
Yeah, I'm thinking that's a real essential element of information when we sit down and talk.
Well, and then I think the next part of that, which the Alderman Grant's point is, if it is passed and available, what is the process to just start rolling that out? So just.
And then the in addition to that, if we can, as part of that, it's okay to have the attorney look at it and say, I think we need to do it again. I'm just looking at process. One, to your point, Mayor, which is a very good point. What if we've got the right one, when, let's do it. If we know, we believe we've got to go to the legislature to go above whatever that number is. What is that process? How do we start it?
Yes.
And so have that documented so that we've got a roadmap saying how to go forward.
Well,
That's all I was looking for is, to your point, Mayor, which is a good one. If we could do it today, and we knew we could do it today, why wouldn't we do it today?
Well, that process, just a 30,000-foot view, essentially, we have a legislative sponsor. Ideally, you want to talk to both your local representative and senator and make sure they're both on board.
Right.
They're going to want to see a uniform board, pretty much unanimous, that's what this town wants. Ideally, the county, who indicated they support it, would give us unanimous support on that. And then they would either send it to their bill, if they're agreeable, send it to the bill writing component. I would draft it myself because we have the model already of the existing legislation to try to speed that process up. And then it goes through the meat grinding of the General Assembly.
That's for the 1% that we've already.
No, that's additionality. That's why I asked the
why that
question.
was so hard.
But we just had an election and it matters who's holding those seats. And if we want to get some
How much time do we have left with Harry
with,
Brown? I mean, I know he was, he didn't run, but I mean, when does the turnover
I know that the appellate courts are the end of the calendar year. And I'm thinking that may be true for the General Assembly too, but I can get an answer on that.
we could try to run it? Well, I don't know if we could rush it through that fast with him because we're going to see him next week at Highways.
Well, it wouldn't hurt to just bring it up.
And
Well, his reputation, if he, even if he endorses it in concept now, while he's still holding office, I certainly would recommend we try to get that endorsement.
okay.
Anyway, the whole point is, if we're leaving money on the table, let's not leave money on the table. Let's move forward with it. I think there was an issue about what we had to do. That's all I was looking for.
Okay.
And then you want me to talk about paid parking? Since I have
Oh,
that on
yes,
there.
sir.
Great. On the paid parking, just simply, this question for Dave. I know that we've got a sign that says we're doing it in the spring. Okay, I think just to be out front, every time I drive by the parking lot on my way to my house and I see cars sitting there, I think my wife goes $10, $10, $10, $10. Okay, we're a town that is going to need money. That's going to have to do with beach projects. Okay, and my question is, I understand we've got issues with the south end about street parking and stuff like that. I don't understand why we can't just put in, we've got to get kiosks for that and do that kind of stuff. Why we can't do that separate from figuring out the other stuff. And again, Dave, I'm just looking at, I don't want to leave money on the table. We're going to be short revenue. We're going to need
You're
money for
looking
beach
for a phased
projects.
in approach.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, well, part of the delay in doing anything with paid parking has been the decision on the federal project. Because the federal project mandates certain kinds of parking that if we chose not to do it, we wouldn't have to deal with. The existing vendor that we have implementing paid parking comes with some upfront expense. That being the purchase of kiosks, and they recommended 6 of them in various places. I'm looking at another alternative to try to avoid buying or having kiosks at all. And in fact, working in conjunction with some of our neighbors on the island to try to identify a way to go to paid parking without taking on a whole lot of extra expense. The kiosks that they were talking about were $42,000 in change, which they would finance over a 2-year period at 8%. And where we would be responsible for the maintenance of them. I tried to approach them on leasing and the leasing is not available to us. Actually arranged a meeting next week, to take a presentation for this second vendor to see if we can avoid all that upfront expense. And then, it could be full speed ahead as quickly as we can implement it.
We're not, but you was 6, we're not going to see, the biggest parking lot is the one north of the bridge.
Well, you need one in that parking lot, one in the adjoining parking about one across from Rogers Bay. I believe they're projecting one down at the Knowles Park, as well as one up at the north end to replace what we have there. So yeah, we came out the sixth, the way they have decided. And I just don't think that's necessary. There's some other issues, that we're gonna have to talk about. For example, when we implement it, well, what are we gonna charge? The original, first store was $5 for a half a day, $10 for a full day. I'd like to know how that compares to what any other town locally might want to do. The north end, we've actually done pretty well with the 4x4 money this year. That's $20 to go out for a day. In Carolina Beach, it's $50, and they still pack the beach every weekend. Do we want to have annual parking passes? Do we want to have, we've had free access for handicapped people, or people with handicap placards who may or may not be handicapped? Do we want to continue? Do we want to have free parking for residents, since most residents can walk to the beach anyway? So I think these are some issues we have to go over. In addition, I want to know things about specific staffing, who's going to do the enforcement, how many people are going to be there, who's going to supervise them, because we've had permit problems at the north end with that. Will we charge for golf carts? I don't know, I think these are some things that we should get together and hammer out before we go too much further.
Can we get a punch list? I mean, the thing is, I like to just have a punch list and we just check them off and move. I'm just looking at, we've been talking about it since I've been on this board about doing paid parking, and it's hard for me to tell whether we've made any progress on that at all. And I'm sure we have. And I get emails from people and postings and everything else. And again, I'm just looking, like, if this was the summertime, I would be apoplectic, because I'd be looking at parking lots that are full. It's not like we're losing that much money, but even to phase it in, if we've got 3 kiosks we put in that we know we're gonna hit, right? And I don't know, Joan, Mayor, you're much more adept at how many people we're gonna see parking there anyway.
One of the issues, though, is that Dave mentioned, is one of the other organizations that he's looking at speaking with about this matter doesn't use kiosks at all. It's all done with your phone. Okay.
So the expense is going.
It's a start.
Think of all
Money to save.
all the stuff, all the headaches that just disappeared.
So you also mentioned that you're scheduling a meeting
And he's
for
gonna have a
next
meeting
week.
Oh, that's right.
Alderman,
Yeah,
are
I'll
you
go.
available?
Yeah,
And
whenever.
Mr. Grant, would you
Sure.
possibly be available to attend that as well? And then you guys can report back out to
Yeah,
us as a
no,
board.
and Dave and I already talked earlier today about that. And so,
That looks like something we would look at. That's a lot of that.
yeah, I mean, that just completely.
Well, I don't understand how you're gonna do the half day and full day either, but
I was gonna say, I think you just gotta hit them with one fee. It's trying to get people out of there half a day, and you're
But
gonna
I
start
think we
ticketing
need to,
people.
but to get back to it, I think we need a plan, and that plan needs to address all of the items
Right.
that you were going through,
Right.
so
That's all I want
let's
to say.
just get together and get that moving,
That's all I have.
okay? Okay, the next item is the county land use plan with Ms. Hill.
All of a sudden I forgot how to do it.
And I believe, Ms. Hill, what you're doing tonight is looking for the board's approval of the updates that were put into the county land use plan, right?
Yes, that's correct. We made the revisions. I worked with Wayne and Holland with Holland and Associates and made the revisions requested. And then we presented it to the planning board. Planning board reviewed and is resubmitting it to the Board of Aldermen with recommendation for acceptance.
So do we have a motion?
When, don't we have to wait for it to come back from the planning board?
It did.
Just
Yeah,
did.
it is.
It's right there.
So
Well,
moved.
that's why I couldn't understand what you said.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm not used to having like something on my chin. It's
Okay.
distracting. The planning board recommends that the Board of Aldermen adopt the county land use plan as presented.
And I was trying to get a motion in a second, so if there's any discussion, you can have that.
Motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second
Any discussion?
discussion.
Go ahead, sir.
I would just like to commend Deb, Planning Board, and Landon for the update they did to the original document that we were looking at back in July. They've added additional information about the coastal resiliency, which I think is really an important aspect of coastal life and responsibility of municipal governments to be thinking about coastal resiliency. And our next item on the agenda, we'll be talking more about that, but now we have it in the Cameron Land Use Plan. There was also a policy or implementation plank put into the updated version that supports conservation more than just the what we had with the Con D aspect of the land use plan. So I applaud the Deb and the planning board for strengthening what I think is the plan, and as well as the edits that were corrections that were made edit wise. So I think we have a really good updated land use plan now. I'm very much in favor of what you've done, and thank you for your work.
Great, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And then, Ms. Hill, you're back on for the Osprey request, which was just, it's the golf cart parking, right?
That's right. I met with some of the gentlemen from Osprey and went out and walked on the property. And kind of my recommendation or my proposal was, rather than go back and forth on something that was tenuous or not permanent, and for the town to, for the town to sublease the property, when I pulled the plats, there was already a recorded easement, that the 10-foot easement that was part of the Osprey subdivision. So to me, it made more sense for them to help them use what they already have, in which was a matter of record. And I also spoke with NCDOT. As long as that 10-foot easement, which it is, was out of the right of way, then they had no issues with the golf carts transversing back and forth on that.
So they can come right down the grass area, basically.
Yeah, they'll have to make, yeah, I think.
Can you bring up an actual satellite map of that intersection? Because
Right.
there is, it's more than just grass. They're gonna have to do a lot of really some construction work to get a path there.
And they're gonna have to work with the neighbors too. There's a concrete monument that may or may not be in the way. It's very difficult to tell on the ground. One of the things that I thought, to kind of split it up with them is that, and let me read you the planning board's recommendation first, to that I can incorporate theirs on. That the planning board recommends that the board of Aldermen, that if the Osprey HOA is willing to install post and rope on the Osprey side 10-foot easement, that the town install post and rope on the BA 32 10-foot easement and allow for cart parking parallel to the walkway within the public easement. So it kind of breaks it up to where we take the public side of it, and Osprey is responsible for the post and rope to maintain the safety of the golf carts and to ensure that they're in that public, or in that 10-foot access easement. So if you think of another condition, I mean, you can certainly impose other conditions, but I thought, this is what the planning board had discussed, and,
What did the homeowners, have they responded to your proposal at all?
I met them out there. It would be, I think, easier if we marked it on the ground, to where that we knew finitely where the lines were. I had the plan on my phone. We were out there on the ground trying to line up the aerials, with the property. But in concept, I think that they seem to be okay with it. And there was some discussion of, well, how do we get the golf carts out there? Because that boardwalk, I think it's a 3-foot boardwalk, 3 or 4 feet, and it appears to be actually in the middle of that easement. So you could either shorten it to where that you could get golf carts in there, parking on the side, and then get out of your golf cart and then walk up that ramp. Or you could relocate that boardwalk to further side, either on the north or the south. But I would, I think that the town manager and public works could probably work that out. It's just the basic concept of, getting the board's approval on them using an existing easement and what conditions you would place in exchange for allowing them to use their golf carts,
So
park their golf carts.
I do the GIS up, so just to clarify what I think we're saying is, we're saying there's potentially a 4-foot easement on the Osprey side that will take them pretty much, now, Grant, I'm gonna overlook whatever obstacles they have to get themselves where they wanna be, but say a 10-foot easement to get them all the way down basically to where Town Park is, right?
Yes.
And then they would cut over.
That's what she's showing.
Oh, Jeffries, I'm going the wrong way. Yeah, there's Osprey right there. Oh, I was thinking they wanted some of our parking.
This is an update to that.
Okay.
She went back to them and decided that it was
Okay.
probably,
That's my fault then, because I was still thinking we were giving up paid parking
see,
spots.
that way we don't have to sublet the lot that we're leasing to the homeowners association.
Correct.
Which is a big, I think, a
Correct.
big success for this.
That's the other part. You're not interfering with the town's plans for paid parking. You're not taking an item that you used the taxpayer's dollar for and converted it to a semi-private use. Or it would be private for, if it was exclusive parking for them. It just, that whole thing just seemed to be a little convoluted, and this seems to be just a
So-
lot cleaner and more permanent.
That lot that has their crossover on it right now looks like it's already part of Crystal Shore, so I'm assuming then that owner's giving them permission to do whatever they want there with their parking?
Well, that easement is like 5 feet on one owner's side and 5 feet on the other owner's side. So we would certainly have to work with we would certainly notify the property owners for both of those lots and work with them. But it's a deeded, that's been a deeded public beach access easement since I want to say early 80s, when that subdivision was first platted.
I guess my question is, and then this might be too much detail, but if I understand the deeded beach access being there, because I can see that.
Right.
What I'm saying is it's, I'm gonna say on, but even though I understand that there's an easement there for the beach access,
Right.
it's somebody's private property there where they want to park.
It
Or
is-
is that their problem to work out the easements with that property owner so they can park there?
I'm gonna defer to the town attorney on that.
I'm trying to figure out, like, what is the town responsible for here?
Well, what is the town responsible for, or what is the what are we asking the Board of Aldermen to do?
But what would, in this situation,
Right.
if they can go down the 10-foot easement and come across where there's a public access, if
Right.
they wanna park their golf carts there, is it their responsibility to understand if they're allowed to park there or not?
I would certainly want to work with them to notify the property owners that there was a public beach access there and that the Board of Aldermen were granting, we're giving them permission to park their golf carts in a public beach access easement.
But I guess I can't tell how wide this easement is, so,
10 feet.
but the walkway itself is how wide?
I want to say 3 or 4 feet.
Right, so they've got about 6 feet to park their,
Yeah. Go straight in, down towards the quay.
okay.
They have room along there. Yeah, they got parking for their cars.
We're either gonna have to move that boardwalk over, or we're gonna have to shorten it to allow for the golf carts.
Okay.
And it's really a limited, there's not any public parking immediately in that area. Other than, of course,
Are they going to pay the expense to whatever we have to do to that?
I hadn't asked them if that could certainly be a condition.
Anybody else have any questions? Are you looking for an answer, or was this just an update?
It's kind of a proposal to the board.
I guess from my perspective, and I'm not gonna speak for any other board member, but I kind of feel like the only request that would be coming to us as a town would be, could we possibly shorten that boardwalk to allow them to be able to park some of their golf carts in there? But I don't know, you know, that would be it, because you're talking about them being on their own easement coming over. So this really isn't, I guess I'm trying to figure out from a town, other than that question, what, as a board, do we need to decide?
Do you have any problems? I guess the question is, do any of the board members have an issue with relocating that boardwalk or shortening the boardwalk and Osprey members and their guests parking golf carts on the beach, at that beach access?
But it's a private access, right? It's not a camera.
That is a public access.
Public access.
It's been a public access since that plat was approved. The 10-foot easement that 10-foot access easement just simply says 10-foot access easement. It was part of the original subdivision plat when it was approved.
That's just one question.
Yes, sir.
How do we deal, we have the issue, another law that the town manager brought up about, are we gonna have golf carts pay for parking? So we're also talking about, if this is our access, are we gonna charge them for parking there as well? Because it seems to me if we make the decision as a town that we're gonna charge people for golf carts, then we have to charge people for golf carts.
And then also, we didn't, you know, there was another subdivision down closer to the south end that was having some maintenance issues on their crossover. And we let them figure it out, because it wasn't a public, I don't think that one was a public crossover. I can't remember the name of that subdivision.
All I'm saying, my point is, either if we're gonna do it, then we do it. If we're not gonna do it, then we don't do it.
Yeah, I don't think, right, if we're gonna pay, if people are gonna pay to park and we charge golf carts, then even if they drive their golf carts over, they'd have to pay there too.
That's the point. I think Mr. Benson's got a point.
Yes, sir.
So 2 points, 2 questions. 2 points. Deb, I think this is a very simple solution to the problem that we've been talking about during 2 board meetings, so I'm very much in favor of it. To the question about, we're gonna charge park golf carts, now it's my understanding that if you had a hurricane reentry pass, if you were a property owner in this town, you were not going to be charged if you parked on a side street or if you parked in one of the public parking areas. You were not gonna be charged.
That was one of the questions Mr. Gilbert brought
Well,
up.
that, you know, that was one of my basic understandings when we were talking about public parking back a year ago. But I would say that the golf cart would fall in with vehicle and hurricane reentry pass. So that's just something to keep in mind when you go through the caveats.
Well, and to your point, I think that given previous discussion about paid parking, we haven't fleshed out that yet. Because I kind of look at it the same way you do. I like getting in my SUV and driving up to the north end and waving my hurricane reentry pass. And I would expect if I wanted to go to one of the town lots to probably be able to do the same thing once we go to paid parking. But that's something that we haven't really fleshed that part of the paid parking concept out yet. And I think whatever we do would follow in suit with that. But, you know, keeping also in mind, as we talk about golf carts, with the exception of the ones that are street legal, the ones that are, they're supposed to be paying a $50 a year fee, I believe it is, to get a town registration, if it's not a street legal golf cart. Is that right, Bill?
I don't think it's 50, it's 25.
But they're paying already, so I'm not sure we want to double whammy them, you know, and these are the ones that can't be driven on
they're not street legal, they're the.
Right, but that's
Yeah.
just the ones that are gonna be driving on
Mhm.
the street somewhere, but if they were driving on that public access, they wouldn't fall in there.
What are the
I don't think,
recommendations,
I'd have to look at where they're driving.
what are the recommendations that the planning board had made that I don't think I captured it in here, is that they wanted a sign posted that said golf cart parking only, to where that somebody's not, riding their motorcycle up there and trying to park their motorcycle in there, or some other
Vote.
boat, something.
Go back to your point though, my thought is how are they getting from their house over in Osprey over to that easement, okay? Okay, so they're driving, through that. I don't know if we've been, I think to drive through there, they still have to have the pass if
You
it's
still
not a
have to
street legal
cross the
golf
main
cart.
road.
They still have to cross the road.
Say again?
Right, they still have to cross the road, so.
Right. So we're already charging them once.
I have a question. They said for themselves and their guests. So if a lot of people, when they rent their houses, they leave their golf cart. Well, that's not a homeowner. So if they have their hurricane pass, I would think they would have that in their own vehicle and not have it on their golf cart, leave it in the condo for their golf cart. So if they're not homeowners, do they get, I don't know.
Well, and if it's a public beach access, why would parking there only be limited to that neighborhood?
Just real quick, I think those are issues that we have to get when you go to the parking thing, because the issue you raised is an issue I've had, the Golf Pro over at North Shore is a yearly rental. It's like, why do I have, if I have that, and I'm renting for a year, why do I have to buy a pass? Okay, and I said, well, the homeowner could get a pass and give it to you. But I think those are the issues. I think it's a really good issue to bring up.
I've got a magical question for you. How else is any other golf cart gonna get there? Because
They're gonna drive down the
The road.
pedestrian path
if I had
or the
a,
road.
if I had a street legal golf cart, could I drive down the road from,
No,
No, because of the
you
45.
can't drive in a
mile an hour.
45-mile-an-hour zone.
right, so it's pretty much gonna be restricted to that Osprey development right there.
Well, what people shouldn't do and what they sometimes do are two different things.
Just drive down the pedestrian path there in front of the house.
I just think that's gotta be something that's addressed with the parking people. I think Susan, that's a great.
That's what they'll do.
So what do we want, what is the pleasure of the board
Well, what is
right now?
the planning director want from the board?
That if the Osprey HOA is willing to install post and rope on Osprey side of the 10-foot easement, that, the board authorized the town manager and public works director to install post and rope on the VA 32 side and allow for car parking parallel to the walkway within the public easement.
The only thing I'd like to add to that is if there's any modification to that crossover to accommodate the golf carts, I do believe that Osprey should pay for that.
I agree.
I also think that they need to know if we decide to go forward with paid parking, maybe they're not gonna wanna do all the work to get that. They should know that that's a possibility, that's all.
So we haven't flushed out paid parking and if it would impact their guests trying to, if they rent their homes.
Right.
And I'm not sure how many of those are rentals over there, but if they rent their homes, we just haven't flushed all that.
That needs to be reduced to writing before they start spending money.
I agree.
That understanding needs to be, and if you would make that a condition of any motion, I would appreciate it.
So moved.
Okay. All right, so is that something that Ms. Hill would draft up?
Well, I can help her,
Okay.
just something that, I'd have to look at this.
We just added a few conditions, so yes.
They just need to understand and acknowledge that, because what I don't want them to argue is, had we known
We didn't know.
Right.
back in November that we were gonna be charged for parking our golf carts, we would never spent this money, so give us the money back, or,
Yeah.
you know, blah, blah, blah.
So can you place the condition that the planning director notified the HOA that there may or may not be paid parking for the golf carts? That's,
I want them to sign something.
Yes, but I believe that wording is
Okay,
where we are right now.
I thought she said to notify them.
No,
I can do a letter to them. I can do a letter to all the property owners and get the president to sign it, acknowledging it, or everybody there for that matter.
because we also have to ask them to pay for any modification to crosswalk.
All right.
Right, and
I'm sorry, go ahead.
we're getting in an area there that, it's simple. We tell them up front, either they want to sign off on it, or they don't. If they don't want to sign off on it, then they don't spend the money, and it's a 5-minute way to avoid a 2-year headache.
So why don't we have Ms. Hill draft it up and go through the town manager and through the town attorney for approval before it goes out?
Look, just one quickie. I think it's critical that you town attorney signs off on it, because, I've talked to you about this before, because they have to deal with it. Enforcing something against an HOA and individual people is not easily done.
Right.
And so I think that making sure that we sign off on it is.
Yes, Mr. Peters.
Does this resolution you've outlined for us here, does that encompass both community groups?
What's the other community group?
There's 2 community organizations in there, as I understand it.
In Osprey?
Mhm.
In Osprey?
I think there are 2 HOAs in there.
Yeah, I was not aware of that.
Good point, too.
So whatever you do, you need to bring them both into play.
Okay, any other conversation on that? Move on. All right, the next item is NC Coastal Resilience.
Before we go on, I know what we decided here, but there was also in this recommendation, the discussion on changing the speed limit from 45 to 35, and there was some discussion that, well, then you could have street legal golf carts. I still want the planning board to continue to investigate reducing the speed limit from 45 to 35, start a new road down to approximately the Seaview Pier. That's a very congested area, as we all know. Hundreds of cars come in there to park in those parking lots.
That was discussed with the NCDOT, it was discussed with the planning board, and they do not want to do that. That's why they put forward the record. I don't know if you read the whole entire report, but there was also, since you bring that up,
The planning board did not want to do it, or the NCDOT?
Neither one. Neither one. Neither one. All that is in that report, but, and I'll be more than glad to go back over that. That wasn't part of, they didn't want to recommend it. It wasn't part of the recommendation.
Ready to move on? Mayor Pro Tem? Yeah, okay. All right, so the next under new business is NC Coastal Resiliency with Mayor Pro Tem and India.
Okay, I did talk a little bit about that. Our updated county land use plan does have a paragraph in there acknowledging the importance of coastal resiliency, infrastructure, and recovery from storms or catastrophic events. And there is actually a program in North Carolina to help communities with this. I have to acknowledge India Mackison, our senior fellow, because she came up with this idea that we should maybe move forward in this direction, because it's a way to formalize developing community resiliency, and it allows you to be able to actually apply for specific kinds of grants. So she's prepared a presentation that I would like her to go through now. And it's going to be basically for just our consideration. I'm not going to take any action tonight. It's just Here, two sheets of the topic, and then we can talk more about it at the December meeting. So India, if you are ready, go ahead.
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes. Yes.
All right, great. Okay, so hi, I'm be giving just a brief presentation about the NC Coastal Community Resilience Guide. All right, so Deb, next slide. Okay. So the Coastal Community Guide is an online resource produced by the NC Division of Coastal Management. It's presented as a story map with an outstanding number of resources, guidance, and case studies on coastal resilience. In short, it's a comprehensive guide on resiliency for local governments in North Carolina. Next slide. So DCM created this guide, which was launched earlier this year, to walk local governments specifically through coastal resiliency planning in the face of climate change. Climate change is shifting averages and therefore extremes, pushing communities into uncharted territory. As a coastal community, elected officials and staff are familiar with decision-making in a dynamic environment, but climate change is creating a new normal, requiring them to more regularly reassess. The guide has several detailed steps, starting with assembling a core leadership team that are adaptable to fit any town. Going through the guide will give NTB a clear picture of climate hazard risks, such as stronger storms and sea level rise. Once we have a good understanding of those risks, the guide can help us create a plan to leverage resources and partnerships to address those risks. All right, next slide. Overall, the guide is about being proactive when it comes to climate hazards. The documentation, data, and policies that would come out of the guide would set up NTB for both short-term and long-term benefits. First, it increases the chances of securing grants, which I will go over in detail in the next slide. Second, research has shown that risk reduction is a great investment. If we put in place policies and projects that address climate hazard before they get worse, we will reduce future damage, costs, and heartache. In the table pictured here from a National Institute of Building Sciences report, you can get an idea of the benefit-cost ratio for common hazard mitigation methods, such as exceeding building code requirements. Third, the guide will consolidate climate-specific planning and policies. NTB has addressed climate and environmental hazard mitigation in several ways already, but the guide could produce a product that puts all those efforts in one place, which would give the town a clear idea of where it should go next. Fourth, the guide could give more focus and attention to soundside and on-beach infrastructure initiatives. The work that's been done on the beach has been critical to protecting town infrastructure, but dialing in on what's happening behind the dunes is an essential piece to coastal resiliency. Okay, next slide, please. So strengthening our grant applications would be the most immediate effect of the guide. I've been looking into stormwater grants for the town this past year, and our biggest barrier to those grants, in my opinion, is a lack of technical documentation. Grant programs want to fund well-researched, shovel-ready projects. We can't put together a strong application for a stormwater grant, for example, without investing in technical surveys and engaging key stakeholders. The guide would help us identify these priorities and inform decisions on where the town should invest. We can actually apply for technical assistance through DCM's new NC Resilient Coastal Communities grant program. It's divided into 4 phases, the last 2 focused on funding shovel-ready construction projects, which where the big money really will be. But to qualify for those construction funds, we must participate in the first 2 phases, which are community engagement and a risk and vulnerability assessment. The guide would walk us through the steps needed to complete these first 2 phases. And by January 15th, 2021, we can actually apply for direct technical assistance to do just that through this grant program. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. All that said, I want to emphasize that the guide is highly adaptable to the town's needs, which includes timelines, priorities, and the final product. The final product would ultimately be up to the core leadership team to decide, but here are some examples, such as a climate impact and resiliency report or a stormwater solutions feasibility study. Next slide, please. Okay, here are the main steps outlined in the guide. These steps can be modified, reordered, or even omitted according to the core leadership team's goals. Each step has several parts described in detail in the guide. Next slide, please. Here's an example of what could be accomplished by the guide. In February of this year, the town of Duck completed a coastal hazards infrastructure vulnerability assessment. It evaluated the adaptive capacity for 65 buildings and 32 miles of road. The town partnered with Western Carolina University to complete the assessment, which ultimately produced data and recommendations that town leaders will be able to use to make more informed decisions. Next slide, please. I'd like to turn it over to Mayor Pro Tem Benson to discuss potential first steps should the board decide to move forward with this.
So what we want you to think about between now and December is, do we want to develop a program like this, develop a guide like this? We would have to assemble a core leadership team to do this, which would be composed of some members of the board, some staff, some stakeholders from town. This would give us, I think, an opportunity, as I said before, to be more, to be able to generate the kind of data we would need to be successful in developing grants. For instance, I'm really concerned about stormwater management on our two major roads, primarily New River Inlet Road, but also we have a serious problem on Allen Drive by the fire station there. So I think that this sort of activity could be really beneficial if we decide to move forward with developing this guide that India has described. So India, is there one more slide you wanted to mention before we?
Yes. This is just a list with links to the Coastal Community Resilience Guide itself. If it's not clickable in the packet, I'll have to go back and look. I can send those out. And also some case studies from the guide you can look at, like the one I mentioned about Duck, and some from a pilot program the DCM did a few years ago too. So just want to point those resources out, and that's it.
Okay, well, thanks, Ian. So like I said, I would just like us to think about this. I think we might want to be involved in it as a member of the board. Think of it the benefit to the town overall, and let's be prepared to discuss it a little bit more detail in December.
The only thing I would ask, Mayor Pro Tem, is, to me, this is something that would be great if we could do it island-wide. So I don't know if there's a way to join forces with Surf City and Topsail Beach as well. Because I think if we're going to have some type of committee and organization similar to the Topsail Island Shoreline Commission, actually very similar, it sounds like to me, it would make sense to be an island, not just North Topsail Beach.
You know, and that's a really good idea, because Surf City and Topsail Beach have some very serious problems with soundside flooding.
Yeah, we all have the
That's
same
something
issues.
that we're going to be needing to address here eventually, particularly in the phase 5 area, I think, of town. So, yeah,
Is
I
that
will,
something that you can investigate?
run that by Chairman Smith of the Shoreline Protection Commission, and see what he thinks in the next 30 days as well.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Thank you, India. That was very nicely done.
Thank you.
I met with the other two town managers today, and they were talking along those same lines of working on these grants through the Topsail Island Shoreline Protection Commission.
Okay. Perfect.
Good.
These other items, I believe, are very quick. So driving on the beach, I know I am not the only one who got phone calls when we saw some folks that were on the beach at the first beach access. And when I was talking with Chief about it, I didn't even know we had an ordinance that allowed folks to is it more for handicapped folks? I
It's
think?
handicap.
I called him after I
Yeah.
tried you guys.
Yeah, I was like, what? Handicapped folks to drive on, the beach in that specific area for a limited amount of time. I don't understand why we need, and I'm speaking personally again, so we'll go around for comments, but I don't understand why we need that anymore if we've got the drive on beach at the very north end. I think it's causing a lot of confusion and I don't think, I don't see the purpose of it. So I'm sure you're getting unwarranted calls because I know you got a couple from us. So do you have any opinion on that, sir?
I wondered why myself when I first got here and saw it. And the board has allowed it in the past. We also have the other ordinance that allows the commercial fishermen to drive on the beach in the same amount of time from the
That's
service.
mandated by statute. The commercial fisherman is mandated by general statute.
Okay.
You can't prohibit commercial, bona fide commercial fishing.
Okay, but I don't
Right.
think we have that much though.
No, we had one last year, but then he decided not to come. But I was just mentioning that I had a copy of that statute.
So,
Look at the second paragraph.
Right.
but Brian, what about trying to restrict the driving onto the beach other than commercial fishermen, as you just said, to the north end? Is there any issue with that?
I mean, regulating driving on the beach.
Yeah.
Outside of the context of bona fide commercial fishermen, you can enact reasonable regulations.
Well, then we can do.
Right, so is there anybody who would be opposed to, go ahead, Alderman.
Just real quick, because he knows, I tried, everybody here, because I wasn't aware of, my wife and I were walking up the beach, we saw that truck. And so I called, couldn't get anybody else, I called the chief and he said, that guy's got a handicap permit. So I walked up to him and I said, oh, I bet you got one of those handicap permits. He goes, yep, it's right here. All I'm saying is, if we're going to do this, then you should at least grandfather the person that's got that permit for.
Oh, sure.
They come and get those permits every year.
Right.
And it's
If we
generally
decide
been
not to
those
renew
same
them.
two people.
Right. But I was gonna chase the guy off the beach, or at least ask him to leave the beach until I talked to the chief. So I don't have any problem with that, but I just think we gotta be fair to the person that's got it.
Do they buy those permits? And
It's free.
Oh, it's
It's
free?
handicap. Yeah.
how long does it have a stated duration?
It's stated in, it's during the off season. During,
I'd allow that until
I
that.
think you'll let
expires.
it roll out.
right, if we did it, we'd do it for next year.
Right.
Don't allow it. Yeah, every year we start getting a lot of phone calls about why those trucks on the beach, we're like, they got a permit.
So. my
The other
only-
lady that came on the other day did not have a permit, she just thought it'd be a good idea since they were going.
So my only question, and I'll let staff try and decipher this, but I don't remember off the top of my head if we're charging for handicapped folks up at the drive-in beach. Because it says there's no charge, so,
We are not.
okay, so that would be the same then, okay. All right,
I'm not
so,
opposed at all. I agree with that. I just want to give you the caveat that
so are we as a board in agreement that starting next year, that we're gonna let this, expires not the right word, but we're going to decommission.
Don't you have to repeal it?
Decommission it.
We're gonna have to change the ordinance.
Yeah.
So I think what we should do, I'll make a motion that says we should change the ordinance at the expiration of the period that's covered by it this year, because you said it's a seasonal pass. So whenever that seasonal pass would expire, whatever month that is, that for next year, we will make sure we've got.
You can direct staff to bring back a proposed ordinance change, and if it passes, you can make it effective as of that date.
So moved.
Well, we've got,
We don't have to move
so,
it.
just so I understand something here, we're talking about
Two vehicles.
2 vehicles a year, right?
Well, you can have more than two, but
How many do we have right now?
it's been a couple, but what usually happens is those two come get a permit, but then other people be like, oh, you can drive on the beach.
That's the.
And they drive out onto the
It's
beach.
not the issue with them, it's the issue of other people.
Okay.
Some of the guys dress up in police uniforms and get in those things and drive all over.
Yeah, I've seen those guys on those 4-wheelers. You know, as you walk down that, the other problem that I've seen standing up there talking to our guys at the drive-on beach up at the far north end, it seems like every other car
comes up, it's got a handicap placard hanging from the mirror, and, you know, I know it's too much to stop the car and check the tag number that's on it against the tag number that's on the vehicle, but I'm starting to wonder if people are printing those things off on their color printers and hanging them from the mirror so they don't have to pay $20 to park it the north end.
All right, so I'm gonna try and keep us on track. So we've got a motion, do we have a second?
I don't think we need a motion. I think we
Or we're
said
just
you
directing
make it
staff?
direct.
So
You
are
say
we all in favor of directing staff to
Yep.
modify it and bring it back?
Yep.
Yeah. All right, and then for the board meeting schedule, I had this on here, well, there's a couple items here. The one was, as I mentioned earlier, we are scheduled in the library. So as COVID is hopefully lifting a little bit, we do want residents and citizens to be able to start attending to some capacity level. So what I'd like to direct staff to do is to poll the board this week and see if we can come up with an ongoing larger venue where we could accommodate folks coming. So I know St. Regis has offered, we have the fire station. We had originally talked about Alderman Leonard down in Ocean City. I haven't revisited, I don't know the status of that building. So those are three.
Where we used to do it.
Yeah,
I
we've got,
talked to the pro there at North Shore Country Club. He said because of all the COVID stuff, I guess the owner lives in Charlotte and they're not, I asked him about that.
Well, that brings me to the COVID situation. Actually, we're upticking and the governor has talked about going back to phase 2.
well, and then if that's the case, then we would still, we're gonna follow the governor's orders, whatever they are. But I think this is still a conversation that we need to have at some point in time. I don't expect that the room is ever gonna be jam-packed in the near future. But I think it would be good, and if we remain in the current phase we are, then we stay in
I think you have
line.
to plan is what you're saying there. I'm
I have
sorry.
to agree with Alderman Meyer. We're nowhere near being through this pandemic. I think we need just to stay the course, continue to meet here, at least for December, and decide maybe after the first of the year what the situation is and whether we should go to a larger forum where we can have more participation at the meeting. I'm just really worried that it's premature to try to think about having an audience in our meeting with the drastic, really, it's a drastic increase, record high cases of COVID in the United States right now, per day, 100,000.
But deaths are way off.
How long are we gonna hide this?
So-
I thought you were just asking about figuring out what our options are.
I would like to understand what our options are. At some point in time, we are going to be able to open up to some level of participation. It was open last weekend for the big federal project meeting, and we had a handful of people come. It worked out just fine. We're in the firehouse, everybody was spaced out, the back door was, I just think we can figure this out.
I think as we think about options, you mentioned Ocean City and the size of that building and the layout of that building, and you and I were both in it, is such that the number of people we could accommodate with social distancing would probably not make it worth the trouble.
Probably about the same size as this.
It's bigger than this, but I tell you, it's smaller than the firehouse. And I know the firehouse has its own complete set of challenges, but it's a big room.
So, and I'm not asking for us to decide the location
Just the
tonight,
options.
but I am gonna ask Laura to poll the board.
My only point was that I don't even see the church down there in Ocean City
As being an option.
as being an option, viable option, given social distancing requirements.
And then the other item that Laura will be scheduling will be a special meeting with the Carters. So they'll be polling us for availability so we can really dig into the financial worksheets around that. Okay. TISPC 2021 goals. This would be Alderman Pro Tem and Mayor Pro Tem and Alderman Leonard.
Thanks, Mayor. The Shoreline Protection Commission is in the process of developing its goals for 221. And so we're starting with each municipality that makes up the Shoreline Protection Commission. So your members are Alderman Leonard, Connie Patel, and myself. And so the three of us worked the past week and a half to come up with what we thought would be our advocate goals for the state and for the federal, and we have a copy of that before you. And these says 221 under the letterhead, under the icon there. So these are what we have come up with for the state, protect the shallow draft inlet fund, work to change state funding and local funding, financing guidelines for terminal borings, assist in adding 3% increase in occupancy tax on North Topsail Beach, and of course, keep the Shoreline Protection Commission notified of any legislation that impacts the island. So those would be, the first three are really aimed, primary for North Topsail Beach. Now, the other handout that you have are the 220 goals, and those are for the whole island. All right, but these are the subset, and so we've added some new things like the occupancy tax, okay, this year. And so what we're looking for, if you have additional goals, if you think we should be looking at, just for North Topsail Beach, please let Alderman Leonard or myself know in the next few weeks, because at our December meeting of the Shoreline Protection Commission, I think December 3rd, maybe, probably going to be for the next our next board meeting. So we would need to get any additional goals on this list. On the federal side of our goals for North Topsail, of course, our number one priority, as Alderman Linder pointed out, is COBRA and getting that map amendment to get properties out of the COBRA system. Continue to work on a community rating system to keep discounts on flood insurance. And we've had this thing in there about trying to change the authorization. New River Inlet, it's authorized at 6 ± 2 and 90 feet wide. It's the only shallow draft inlet in North Carolina that is at that authorization. All the other ones are at 8 ± 2 feet.
Right.
So it makes more of a challenge for the dredger when the Army Corps dredges the inlet, and it's also takes less time for that inlet to show in for navigation. So, it's to our advantage to have that authorization increased. We talked to Camp Lejeune about this. They're supportive, but they really haven't come through in any major way of helping us towards this goal. So we'd like to maybe keep that in as our federal goal. And as I said, if you have any other goals that you think we should be adding for North Topsail Beach, if something comes up right now, we can go ahead, whatever. Tom, you have comments?
No, I think you covered it all well. I think for us here locally in the town, the big change from last year is the incorporation of the state level goal to dealing with the terminal going. Yeah. And try to change the issues with both financing and the use of state funds. Try to get that came along.
So if the board has any comments, should we say get them to you all by, say, the 15th of November if possible?
Yeah, just email them to both of us,
Yeah.
and then one of us will get them to Connie.
Yeah.
She's our third member of the TISBC.
Okay. All right, the next item would be the annexation request with the town of Holly Ridge. So,
Thank you, Mayor. The general statutes allow municipalities to enter into annexation agreements that would bestow rights upon one or the other or both that they wouldn't otherwise have. In this particular case, Holly Ridge has a voluntary petition for annexation of a piece of property that's west of the Hunter Heath Drive on the other side of Turkey Creek. But it is closer to the town of North Topsail Beach corporate limits than it is to Holly Ridge. And in order for them to annex it, we have to agree to it. They have proposed an annexation agreement that would cover more than just this parcel. We can work out those details as to how much you want to allow, but it is in an area that, unless we build a bridge, if we have the authority to annex.
a second bridge.
Right. If we had the authority to annex it, and you know, our charter has some restrictions, and we're working towards trying to address that. Right now, we couldn't anyway, but we are hoping to get that restriction removed or modified. But given the location of this property on the other side of Turkey Creek, I don't think we would ever have an interest in it. So I don't have any problem recommending that we enter into an annexation agreement with Holly Ridge.
For this specific.
At least for this property. The statutes are pretty detailed as to how you go about entering into those annexation agreements. We would have to have a public hearing, as would Holly Ridge. But the statute allows for a joint public hearing, and I floated the idea to their town attorney today that if this board would be willing to have that joint public hearing at our December meeting to us, to make it more convenient on us. We can always do it virtually. There's special meetings, all of that. I think it makes sense to do a joint meeting to save money and time. So I don't need a motion or anything, but if it's the consensus of the board, I'll work with Mr. Fountain, the town attorney for Holly Ridge, to get the annexation agreement to a level that I'm comfortable recommending you enter into. I'm going to tell you now, even if it's just this parcel, as I sit here now, I'm fine with it, and I'm comfortable recommending it. And then we move forward with a joint public hearing.
President?
Several towns have annexation agreements.
I just mean, because we've heard there's a lot of noise going on because of the Seats Ferry stuff, and then we're trying to get a Seats Ferry.
Something's different. What the public doesn't understand, in 2012, the General Assembly changed the annexation laws, and it is almost impossible to have a forced or involuntary annexation. These days, the only way you're going to be annexed, absent the General Assembly changing the law, is if you want to be annexed. Now, the town of Leland did do an involuntary annexation. It's the first and only one in the state of North Carolina. But that's because the area was a subdivision that wanted to be annexed because their streets were in such bad condition, it was cost prohibitive for them to do it. They almost got 100% petition. They didn't get 100%, so then we had to put it on a referendum, and the referendum passed this past November. In fact, I have that ordinance framed because it's the first and only one in North Carolina. So they're common, and particularly in a situation like this, there's really no need for us to get in their way.
I just concerned about the precedent.
And they can be terminated. There's built-in safeguards too.
So my only question, and it might, and I'm sorry, I'll get right to, but my only question, and Christina, I know you're here representing the, I don't know, seller, okay. Is it just a residential development or something they're trying to build?
It is a 97-acre tract of land that is zoned rural agricultural.
Okay.
We explored all of the options, whether it was the county, town of Holly Ridge, whatever, who would be the easiest people to deal with for the plans that the buyer potentially has.
Okay.
Town of Holly Ridge, we determined nobody can get a sewer at that site. But there are some advantages to some of the zoning ordinances in the town of Holly Ridge. Exactly. And the potential builders that would take lots on this tract would greatly prefer to deal with Holly Ridge for the quicker turnaround on inspection times and streamlined process of building.
Okay, so we're not losing potentially a commercial tract is what I'm trying to get at. Okay.
No, and the other thing about it, the sellers wanted to ask you guys is, it's nice to hear that the attorney is in favor of at least this particular one y'all doing an agreement on. But, it comes back to if you want to stab at it, are your police going to go 7.4 miles from the town hall to protect it or take it? Is the fire department?
Asking for a helicopter.
Well, the fire department going 7.5 miles from your corporate limits to go, there's a lot of expenses associated with the municipality to go that far outside.
Well,
and it was a shock to us.
How far is it from Holly Ridge?
It is 2.92 miles or 93 miles. So it's got to be within 3 miles of the contiguous city limits of the town. We can't go off of ETJ. So we did have a surveyor verify that it was within 3 miles. And it was interesting, they'd already had their annexation meeting. They've already published everything.
We've gone through public comment period on the zoning, assignment for it. And then it finally got brought up, oh, hey, this is closer to North Topsail Beach notice to us. So we've got to go through them. The problem I'm running into is that these owners are heirs and the county is pressing them very hardly to close this estate by the end of this year. The proposed buyer for this property wanted to close sometime in the month of November. It is disheartening to hear that maybe we'll have to wait till December to get this taken care of.
Well, it'd be the
First
first
week.
Thursday in December.
And that's their choice. I was just saying this is my client.
I understand.
To
yes, sir.
facilitate their schedules, if they would be willing to come to us at our place. And I think that'd make them more inclined to do it sooner rather than later.
I mean, Town Hall Ridge has their meeting next Thursday, same thing. Just throwing that out there.
That wouldn't be enough. That wouldn't be enough notice to the public, notice. Notice of the public hearing has to get issued out. And we can talk about that outside of the context, earlier date, whatever. If you guys want to propose one, I can talk to the town manager and the clerk, and we can get poll the board to see if they're agreeable to something like that. I just threw that date out there.
Yes.
For my client's convenience.
Yes, sir. Like I say, we're really getting pushback from the county, from special proceedings to have this estate closed by January 1, or they're not gonna be very nice anymore.
And if I may, Mayor, just to clarify for the public listening, it is closer in distance to the town of North Topsail Beach, but it is separated by Turkey Creek. It's not land contiguous.
That's what I was looking at in the GIS. So it's closer if we were to paddleboard over.
Or build a bridge.
As the bird flies across.
Right, but it's not, we have to go all the way up and around.
But to access it by vehicle, it would be 7 miles.
7.4 miles from your old town hall across the bridge.
So, Attorney East, what do you need from the board?
Just a consensus to move forward to work with Mr. Fountain. I'll come back with some alternatives. Is the board willing to entertain alternative dates earlier than the next board
It's
meeting?
fine, yeah.
Okay, well.
But it's based on whatever is appropriate for the public notice and.
Well, we have to comply with that.
Exactly.
Okay. And Holly Ridge wants to comply with that more so, because we're not trying to annex something by virtue of this agreement. They are, so.
Well, and we've already done that, and we've already done a public notice for the annexation in Holly Ridge. I don't know if they have to republish.
No, that's for your petition. This is for the annexation agreement.
Yes, sir, I understand.
So do we wanna?
Is there a consensus for me to work?
Yes, that's fine. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, do it.
Okay. All right, then the next item, is the attorney's report. And you can stay or whatever you want. You're good? Okay.
As everyone knows, last week, Halloween, Saturday, the board unanimously voted to instruct me to that we would be moving forward with the federal project and signing the PPA if we're able to get the LGC agreement modified. I've made that formal communication Monday morning. Secondly, NC Policy Watch used this phrase, so I'm gonna use it. I'm not trying to be political because I think the judiciary should be apolitical, non-political, but the GOP swept the North Carolina Supreme Court and the North Carolina Court of Appeals. All of the Republican candidates won all 8 of those seats. There were 3 on the Supreme Court and 4 or 5 on the Court of Appeals. Justice Paul Newby is now the Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court. So that's my report.
Okay. All right, the mayor's report. I mean, I think everybody in this room, along with most of the public for North Topsail Beach, knows that our efforts over the last few months have been focused on the federal project and also just our budget planning with the Carters for the other large expenses as one of the citizens had mentioned earlier with the police and fire safety building. So we're going to continue down that path. I don't think we're going to have any magic answers even at the special meeting. I think it's going to be a work session where we walk through all of our different options, and it's going to take some time to get through them all to make sure we're doing the right thing as far as how we're going to split up the expense for the federal project. So just wanted to thank everybody here, all the staff and the board, for all the time that's been put into getting to where we are right now. And I think we'll go around and start with Mr. Peters.
Thank you. I just want to thank everyone, as you said, Joanne, for all the work that others are doing in lieu of me. So, thank you. And secondly, it's certainly encouraging that we have taken on a new challenge and seemingly surmounted it tonight with the announcement that of the bids for our renovated town hall.
Yes.
So that's fantastic. That,
Okay,
I'll
thank
sign
you.
off for that.
Okay.
Well, I wanted to thank everybody that tuned in for the Zoom meeting and also everybody else on the board and the staff. We have a great staff. I'm really happy working together with you guys. I also wanted to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving because we won't see each other until after Thanksgiving. And also I wanted to say, even though in this crazy year of 2020, we all have things to be thankful for. And also happy Veterans Day to all the veterans. And also that the board has been given another opportunity to meet with Camp Lejeune. And we've been invited to their cake cutting ceremony for their birthday this year. So I think that's exciting. So anyway, everybody happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. I just mentioned that Manager Gilbride and I met in Topsail Beach last week. The Topsail Island Shrine Protection Commission invited Mr. Kevin Hart, who is the Division of Water Resources Director for the Shallow Draft Program, for the Coastal Storm Damage Reduction Program, and for allocating state mandated money to coastal towns. For instance, the $1.6 million that we got from the state last year that we used for the truck haul project, that money actually was managed, and Manager Gilbride worked with Kevin Hart to facilitate us receiving those funds. But the point was, the idea in bringing Mr. Hart to the island was for him to see firsthand what our situation is here. Each of the towns had a chance to talk with him about their individual issues, and then he went on a tour. For North Topsail Beach, of course, Mr. Gilbride asked Kevin about the state portion of the funding for the federal project. And I'll just go ahead and summarize what he said, if you don't mind, Manager Gilbride, that he put in the $12.5 million for the state share of the federal project in the 2019-2020 budget. Hasn't passed yet, but he will continue each year to add additional budget requests to the state budget to cover the state share of the federal project. And of course, he gave us no guarantees.
Checks in the
He
mail.
was going to provide the money. Typical bureaucrat, but the process is there, so I don't think we need to be as concerned about it now as we were back when we didn't know how the state was going to actually come forward with their share of the project. So we felt pretty good about that. Then they also asked about the issues we're facing with the New River Inlet and shallow draft funding and so forth. We talked about possibly being able to use shallow draft funds for the backfill on Terminal Groin to be able to get around building Terminal Groin. And that's why it's one of the objectives for our state advocate to work on that. So it was a very good meeting. He got an opportunity to see what's going on in the island. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, that pretty much sums it up.
Yeah. Okay, that's my report. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor.
Appreciate everyone joining us tonight virtually. We got a lot going on with the federal project, as everyone knows, and everyone knows we're committed to doing what is right and just for not just the project area, but for the whole town. I'd like to also wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving early. I'd like to wish a happy 245th birthday to the world's finest fighting force, the United States Marine Corps, founded at the Tun Tavern in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania on November 10th, 1775, Semper Fi. I'd also like to wish all our veterans a happy Veterans Day. We've got, just sitting in this room, a number of veterans. Got a lot of veterans on our staff and in our various departments, and they do a hell of a good job for us. Veterans Day is different than Memorial Day. Veterans Day is to recognize and salute all veterans, where Memorial Day is to memorialize those who made the ultimate sacrifice. Interestingly enough, Dave's a former Air Force airman. He did 4 years out of high school. He was at the same base at the same time where my father was finishing his career as an Air Force pilot. And we have walked it backward to the point where we're pretty darn sure that Airman Gilbride rode in the back of a helicopter piloted by Lieutenant Colonel Ed Leonard, my father. And I mean, that's how small the world is. There is a group of us in here that'll be attending North Carolina Beach Inlet Waterways Association annual conference in Wilmington on Monday and Tuesday. Finally, on a somber note, as a town, we observe another important date this month. We have a street up at the north end named Gunnery Sergeant D.W. Boatman Drive. There's also a plaque that was in our town hall that commemorates the dedication of the street in the Gunny's memory. Gunnery Sergeant Darrell Boatman died on November 4th, 2005, which was 15 years ago yesterday, at Lansdale Regional Medical Center, Germany, from wounds sustained on November 2nd, 2005, from an improvised explosive device while conducting combat operations in the vicinity of the village of Habaniya in the Al Anbar province of Iraq. He was a member of the 8th Engineer Support Battalion, 2nd Marine Logistics Group, 2nd Marine Expeditionary Force, Camp Lejeune. He was one of our own. He had ties to this town, and he left behind a wife and 2 children. And I always remember the guy this month. There he is. Thanks for putting that up, Deb.
Thanks, Deb. I
And
didn't see that. I was listening.
that concludes my report.
I got nothing to add to what he said. It's a better closing than I would have. Thank everybody. Happy Thanksgiving. Appreciate the work the staff has done.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay. All in favor?
You're one next time. You're one next time.